Hello and welcome back, guys, gals, non-binary pals, to another reading of Quirk, Class Thaumiel. This will be Chapter 7, The Average Middle School Experience. Here's the summary. Katsuki is a bully, and Izuku fights some rancid jello. This chapter has trigger warnings for suicide baiting, bullying, and gore. It had been 10 years since the incident at the museum, and Katsuki still treated Izuku like some kind of monster. In no time at all, Katsuki had made himself king of the school and gathered a gang of extras who would follow him around and even obey his every order. When his goons overheard him call Izuku a freak, there was nothing to stop their empowerment towards making Izuku's life as miserable as possible. What had started as simple avoidance soon turned into whispered rumors, then name-calling. When Izuku applied to the same local middle school as Katsuki, Aldera Junior High, the bullying picked up steam. Still, no matter what methods they used, be that shoving Izuku around, stealing his things, or calling him names, he remained as cheerful as ever. His perpetual smile was almost unnatural, as any human should have broken under years of such treatment. A third year already, Izuku was now preparing for his move from Aldera Junior High to his dream high school. "A little birdie told me that the freak decided to apply to UA," Tsubasa crowed, walking into the empty classroom Izuku had chosen to sit in while watching the sunset. Tsubasa was quickly followed by Katsuki's other crony, and Bakugo was taking the rear of this little group. "Psh, little villain is what he is," Katsuki scoffed. "If he thinks writing in that darn notebook of his makes him better than me, he's delusional." "Come on, Kachan, I know you're going to be the #1 hero," Izuku responded innocently. "And besides, this book isn't just for becoming a hero. It's so that I can remember stuff about all my different friends." Izuku closed his notebook and held it up as if to demonstrate. "Give me that," Katsuki's other crony named Tasaki said. Tasaki stretched his long fingers across the 5-foot gap between him and Izuku, snatching the notebook away. Almost imperceptibly, Katsuki winced slightly at each crack and pop made by the finger's growth. "Wait, give that back!" Izuku yelled, making a futile grab at the book now held far above his head. "It could be dangerous." "Like a little book could hurt us," Tasaki jeered, and like a human crane, swung his arm and the book clutched in his grasp over to Bakugo. "Take a little look-see, boss. Is there anything spooky in here?" A drop of sweat running down his brow, but unable to make a fool of himself in front of his watching goons, Katsuki took hold of the notebook. "Drop it, Kachan, please," Izuku pleaded as Tsubasa stretched out his wings, leaving no room to pass him. Katsuki quickly flipped through several pages of sketches and descriptions of various entities, stopping suddenly on a page done in color. The title was Painting of the Ocean, and only had a few notes, besides one pointing out that the drawing was only a copy, not the original. Following the note, most of the page was taken up by a watercolor painting in blue. The painting was plain, simply depicting a dark blue underwater scene, with rays of sunlight shining down through the sea. "It's just stupid paintings of water and stuff," Katsuki scoffed, slamming the book closed once more and offering it to the waiting Tsubasa. "Aw, does the little creep want to be an artist?" Tsubasa asked in a sickly sweet tone. "Then maybe you can take a painting of this beautiful flying book." With that nonsensical joke, Tsubasa tossed the notebook through the open window. Izuku ran to it and leaned out the window to see his notebook laying several stories below him, soaking in the koi pond below. "You know, you should really grab your book before it gets ruined," Tasaki suggested. "I've heard that water and paper don't mix." "If you want a quick way to get down, I'd suggest taking a swan dive out the window," Tsubasa joined in. To Katsuki Bakugo, being the best meant rising above the rest. Rising above meant ignoring the weak. So, though he may have thought that suicide baiting was going too far, he said nothing in his childhood friend's defense. Instead, Katsuki turned away from the small boy and just said, "You're never going to be a hero, okay? So give it up unless you want me to beat it into you." On that note, the boy turned and began to leave the classroom, cronies in tow. As he left, Katsuki coughed slightly, then spit on the floor. If inspected closely, one might realize that the spit smelled faintly of seawater. Izuku walked home sadly. Not only had his notebook been soaked through, but Kachan had called him a villain again. Tsubasa and Tasaki could say what they wanted, but He had known Kachan forever. There might be a speck of truth in what he had said. Izuku passed under a bridge, shivering at the change in temperature that the shade brought. "Hey kid, sit still so I can take over your body," a scratchy voice yelled out from behind the boy. Turning, Izuku's first thought was that he had accidentally summoned a friend again, but the massive sludge following him, complete with eyes and teeth, didn't seem friendly in the slightest. The look in its eyes convinced Izuku that this slime entity was not about to negotiate on that fact. The sludge leapt for Izuku, absorbing Izuku into the mass in an instant. "Gotta be fast so I can take over your body before you get a chance to fight back," the villain exclaimed, moving towards the boy's face. Izuku held his hands over his mouth and nose to keep the monster on the outside of his body. Thanks. Izuku felt something get summoned, but couldn't see what it was. His eyes were already covered by the slime being as it attempted to force its way past the boy's hands. Thump, 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 thump. The noise began slow, like a pendulum swinging, but slowly getting faster and faster. "No!" the villain screeched. "Do you have any idea what you just unleashed on the world? Sludge this! I'm out of here!" With a sucking noise, Izuku's vision returned as the sludge over his eyes slid away, reforming into a single mass. Fearfully, the slime tried to slip down the nearby sewer grate, an attempt thwarted by a large black object slamming directly into the villain, leaving nothing but a green splatter across the underpass. The squished remnants of an eyeball could be seen stuck to the wall. The thumping object appeared to be a black rubber ball, the size of a melon. The ball bounced continuously around the bridge's underside, somehow gaining speed with every bounce, rather than slowing down. "Thanks, friend, you can go to..." Izuku tried, but the ball whizzed right past Izuku's ear, so he ducked out of the way of the fast-moving object. "I don't have a moment to breathe. I can't unsummon the ball. This has never happened before. What do I do?" Izuku thought to himself frantically, as the thumping noise around him transformed into a continuous hum. The ball was now moving so fast it appeared to be in multiple places at once. "How do I stop this thing? Maybe the sludge was right." Thankfully, a passerby appeared just in time to help. "Regular citizen smash!" a voice familiar to Izuku called out, and he looked up to see a skinny, no, downright shrink-wrapped, blonde man throwing his fist out into the buzzing air of the underpass. By some miracle, the stranger managed to connect with the ball. For a single moment that felt like an eternity, fist and rubber met. Then, like a bomb had gone off, a resounding bang sounded, and the ball went flying into the sky. The object soared away, parting the clouds as it flew through the stratosphere. "Are you all right, young man?" the stranger asked, now kneeling beside the shocked teen, and held out a large hand to lift Izuku up. That's the end of Chapter 7. The SCPs in this chapter were SCP-018, the Super Ball, and SCP-151, Painting of the Ocean. Continuing right on to Chapter 8, Sobbing Kids and Back Alley Surgeries Don't Mix. Here's the summary. Izuku and Yagi have a heart-to-heart, and Izuku decides to repay the man in an unconventional way. This chapter has trigger warnings for gore. Serious trigger warning for gore. There is an entire surgery in this chapter. Izuku had been having quite a day. First it was Kachan and his bullies. Then it was getting attacked by some mugger made of slime. Finally, his own quirk had practically gone haywire, and now he was getting offered help from a strange man who looked like a blonde human stick bug. Yes? I think so, Izuku responded weakly. "Thanks for the assist, mister," he said, accepting the man's offered hand and pulling himself to his feet. Yagi Toshinori," the stranger declared. "What was that thing anyways? Some kind of rocket?" "It was a rubber ball, actually." At the sight of Yagi's confused expression, Izuku rushed to clarify. "It's my quirk. I summoned it, but it just kept bouncing." That thing was a child's quirk, All Might thought to himself, discreetly massaging his now bruised knuckles. It felt like one of Star's Tokyo Smashes. "A fine quirk," Yagi declared. "Say, you ever think of becoming a hero? A quirk that strong would be invaluable in the business." Izuku gaped at the man in shock. 14 years of being called creepy or useless, and after one interaction, a total stranger calls him hero material. It almost seemed too good to be true. Does he really mean it, though? Izuku pondered. Do I mean what, young man? Yagi asked, confused. I was mumbling again, wasn't I? Izuku thought, in his head this time. Izuku grabbed onto his own pant legs and gripped them tightly, staring at the floor. After a moment, he seemed to gather his courage and looked up at the man across from him. Do you really think that I can be a hero with a quirk as scary as mine? Izuku demanded. Yagi paused and looked thoughtfully towards the sky, staring at the patch of sky now devoid of clouds. Hero work isn't just about the power, kid. It's about the heart. Yagi looked around and leaned in to whisper to the teen. You can keep a secret, right? Sure, Izuku shrugged, proving that time didn't mend his inability to recognize stranger danger. The old man lifted the edge of his shirt, revealing a massive scar. The wound spanned over a foot in radius, originating from a spot just below the rib cage. Gnarled flesh and surgical wounds knotted themselves together to form a mass of scarred skin, barely recognizable as human. In other words, an average Tuesday evening for Izuku. I actually used to be a hero. Then I got this wound, and I had to retire soon after, Yagi explained. My point being, hero work is dangerous. No matter how strong your quirk, every time you put on that costume, you will be risking your life. So, more important than power, yes, much more, is heart. Yagi punctuated this point by poking the boy's chest with his finger. A tear fell from Izuku's eye. Then two, and soon the boy was sobbing. Yagi patted his shoulder reassuringly as the boy wept. There, my boy. All will be well. It's just, other than my mom, you're the first person to ever say that to me, Izuku choked out, wiping his wet face with his sleeve. That can't be right, All Might thought. A quirk that summons balls of kinetic energy, strong enough to hurt me, and nobody once told him he could be a hero? Thank you, Izuku sputtered out, tears coming to a halt. Is there anything I can do to pay you back for everything, mister? Not unless you've got a spare handful of organs, Yagi joked. I do have some of those I could summon. Izuku contemplated the idea a bit before settling on something better. All right, I know it'll help. Just close your eyes, Izuku proposed. Confused, but willing to humor the boy, lest he cry anymore, Yagi closed his eyes. What's that clicking sound? He thought to himself as his eyes shut. No sooner had he done so, a chair of some sort rose up from beneath Yagi's feet. The man's eyes snapped open to find himself reclining in an antique dentist or barber's chair. Stranger still were the metal cuffs attached to the arm and footrests. The guards snapped shut with a metallic sound. It really would be best for you to close your eyes, Mr. Yagi, Izuku said to the man. It always helps me whenever I get shots. What is the meaning of this? Yagi demanded, struggling to no avail to extricate himself from the chair. The metallic cylinder the chair rested upon opened, and a metal arm reached out and up to the frantic man. The arm's end was a sharp, long needle that looked almost like... Oh no, when the kid said shots, he wasn't kidding. The needle rammed its way into Yagi's neck and injected him with some sort of thin liquid. Ugh, Izuku said, holding his hand over his mouth and looking greener than usual. I can deal with anything else, but not shots. They gross me out. Yagi tried to demand answers out of the kid, but found that his mouth had become difficult to move. Looks like the anesthesia is kicking in. I've got to get going, mister. I hope the operation goes well, Izuku yelled as he grabbed his bag and ran off out of the underpass, apparently too queasy to stick around for any longer. Operation? What operation? More metal arms extended from the cylinder, with a number of attachments, from saws and scalpels to tiny liquid suction tubes. The largest set of saws began to work its way through Yagi's shirt, cutting the fabric until the entirety of his scar was exposed. Is this some kind of back-alley surgery chair? Yagi thought as he struggled once more against his bonds. I've got to get out of here. Still, the cuffs held tight. It didn't help Yagi's situation that his arms were completely limp from the injection. The scalpel reached the man's exposed skin and began to make an incision. Seared with pain, Yagi couldn't even scream. Isn't there supposed to be anesthesia? The kid said something about that before he left. Following that thought, Yagi remembered a lecture he had once received from Recovery Girl. after he required surgery to remove a shard of shrapnel while studying at UA. Really, boy? I just had to use the office's whole year's supply of anesthesia just to keep you under for an hour. That ridiculous quirk of yours and its toxin invulnerability. I swear, quirks these days are getting wilder and wilder. That must make whatever was in that syringe the good stuff. Not good enough to knock me out completely, though. Yagi internally screamed as the scalpel finished its cut and a second arm reached for the wound to insert a large tube of some sort. The pain grew worse as the tube started to pump liquid into Yagi's open wound. Seconds later, the searing grew agonizing as he felt that liquid melt away his insides, a process completed by a second tube's insertion and subsequent suction of the liquefied flesh through it. All Might could only watch in horror as he watched the remnants of his organs travel through the clear tube and down into the depths of the chair. Is this how I die? The retired hero thought to himself grimly. Organs stolen by some random kid's magic chair under a bridge? I guess my mom got it right. All Might snapped out of his daze by a third tube's entrance into his chest cavity. This tube was churning out a strange liquid as well, but it felt thicker than the rest. The third liquid burned far, far worse than the others, and although Yagi couldn't work his vocal cords, his mouth opened in a silent scream of terror. The surgery continued for hours after this. While Yagi was only dimly aware of any events that came afterwards, he recalled images of his organs being rebuilt beneath his very eyes, catching occasional glimpses of a long-lost missing lung and liver underneath the many prodding scopes and whizzing saws. Finally, far past the point Yagi felt that he could bear the torture no longer, the arms finished sewing the man's shirt back together and retracted. The 4 cuffs released with a hydraulic hiss, and the man was free. Wasting no time at all, Yagi sped away from the demon-possessed chair as fast as he could. Though his limbs may fail underneath him, and his pure delirium and panic left his sense of reason long in the past, the man would stop at nothing to escape those deadly cuffs, should they decide to call him back for a checkup. After over 24 hours of holding himself up at home, hiding away under a pile of blankets in the pitch dark of his bedroom, Yagi finally checked his abdomen as a damage report. What he found was not the grizzled mess of scars he had become accustomed to over the past decade, but only a single pink incision line, evidence of what he had hoped was a horrible nightmare. The SCPs in this chapter were SCP-018, the Super Ball, and SCP-1300, Liquid Surgeon. And that's all for today. Thank you all so much for listening. I really hope you like this chapter, and stick around for chapters 9 and 10, which will be out soon. See you then. Patch out.